And so none of them can just make the obvious point, which is that, yes, you're worse than Nick Fuentes. Now, who has CNN had on? Oh, yes, everyone who sold the lockdowns, everyone who sold the terror wars, everyone who sold the financial crash of 2008. You got, like, Rob, it's just the arguments just make themselves. You guys are so much worse than him.
CNN is 100 times worse than Nick Fuentes. That's what Dave Smith is saying here. As CNN continues to talk about this interview, Tucker Carlson interviewing a no-no person, so we have to try to smear him endlessly, not only Fuentes, but also Tucker, and now everyone who talks to Tucker, apparently, in a cancellation inception. So let's see what Dave has to say about this. This one's going to be great. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
Here, let's play. I wanted to play this video from CNN, which I saw. This video is going viral on Twitter this morning. I guess it really is something that at CNN, they're still talking about Nick Fuentes on Tucker Carlson. Like, it's by the way, just the
biggest
best
in Charlottesville.
Yeah, well, but again, it's the best example of the thing we always talk about, where, again, the people who are of the system, who are all doing good, you know, a bunch of 1%ers who really kind of like the establishment, they all sit around and they think Charlottesville's the worst thing that's ever happened, or they think Nick Fuentes being on Tucker Carlson show's the worst thing that's ever happened, because, you know, they're like, it's like a host who makes $1.5 million a year and a bunch of people who make $600 to $800 a year sitting around and talking, and like, price inflation really ain't that big of a deal to them. But anyway, I don't know. I guess I was blown away by just how stupid CNN still is. I haven't checked in on them in quite a while, but just it's amazing how much dumber the conversations that are happening on there are than anything happening in this world.
Of course they are, because they're in the death throes of their termination. The American people have turned their backs on the legacy media for good reason, for their coverage on the COVID regime, for their coverage on the war in Ukraine, for their coverage on Israel. It's only pretty easy to see why Americans have discarded the legacy media, and we're seeing that in terms of their coverage of the GOP civil war, which is something of a civil war if you ask me. But all the issues related to it aren't the ones they want you to think it is. It's not over Tucker Carlson talking to no-no people. It's literally about Israel and the Israel first mentality among the right, where some dissident right-wingers are thankfully for the first time saying we're not having any of that anymore. So yeah, that's what it's all about, and Americans are just going to stop listening to CNN. It's stopped having a grip on the American psyche, especially with younger people.
Anyway, let's play a little bit of this clip. It's Stephen Miller's wife arguing with one of the talk show hosts and some other panelists about Nick Fuentes on Tucker Carlson. Here, let's check it out.
Really, it's about whether someone like Tucker Carlson, who is a very powerful force in the conservative movement.
You host people on your show all the time who call my husband and myself a Nazi. So how is that any different from Tucker Carlson going on Nick Fuentes having Tucker Carlson on his show? It's not different.
He's actually
he's anti-Semitic.
A Hitler admirer. Nick Fuentes is actually a Hitler admirer.
But he literally is not a good human being.
That is a different thing.
Excuse me, you have Jennifer Welch on your show very often, and you've never pushed back as she has called my husband a white nationalist.
Hold on.
That is no different than Nick Fuentes going on Tucker Carlson's show. It's not, and you should admit it.
Well, hold on. How is it anything similar? It's not remotely similar at all. Nick Fuentes sits around and says that he likes Hitler. How is that similar?
What does Katie have to do with it? What does she have to do with it? She has nothing to do with it. Literally nothing.
Scott, Katie is the person who just said to me that it is comparable to say that Nick Fuentes, who is literally a neo-Nazi, is the same as somebody, a liberal, who has an opinion, who is not a neo-Nazi. They are not
a hateful opinion.
The same.
How do you want?
I noticed that these guys never mentioned, by the way, the fact that he also said he admires Stalin. That never seems to come up in CNN for good reason, because Stalin has seemed to be Uncle Joe to people in comparison to Hitler, the worst person on earth, despite the fact that Stalin stacked up, 6 to 9 times the corpses of Hitler. Not saying anything redeemable about Hitler. He's a super villain too. He's a genocidal maniac too. But that never comes up. And this is such subterfuge from the issues that Americans are dealing with in terms of the inflation issue, in terms of Israel first, that this just becomes the topic of conversation, that we're supposed to hate this guy for having impure thoughts, and they are, if you ask me, more than the supervillains that dug us into a debt hole, that sold us lies in the COVID regime, entrenched us in a proxy war versus Russia, expanded the surveillance state, spent our posterity into shackles. No, I'm sorry. I'll have nothing of that.
Let's go back to this point one more time. But Nick Fuentes can espouse an opinion on Tucker Carlson's show.
It is not the same thing.
And he didn't push back the same way you didn't push back when someone called someone in my family
Hold on a second.
It's not different.
Hold on a second. If someone comes on this show and says, I love Hitler and I admire what he did, they would never, first of all, I would never invite them on the show and they would never be invited back. So those two things are not the same.
But yet you've gone on Jennifer Wilsh's podcast. It's the same thing.
They are not the same thing.
What I think is so,
but Katie, hold on.
You pause it for a second.
Do you believe that Jennifer Welch has a right?
Rob, I mean, if you're not understanding the arguments that anyone's making there, I just want you to know you're right. Don't feel like, hey, maybe something's going on and I'm a little confused and I'm missing what's exactly happening. Nope, none of them are. I mean, all I got out of this was that I feel bad for Stephen Miller. I don't know what, but regardless of any of this, the thing is, she's so bad at this, Stephen Miller's wife, that is, that all she can go to is making it about herself and coming up with an example of where, I don't know, I guess this woman, I guess some guest said some mean things about Stephen Miller. And so she's like, see, that's the same as having Nick Fuentes, which is like, this is the dumbest way to even make this argument. But of course, the argument is right there, Rob. If Stephen Miller's lady could just get out of crazy chick mode and actually connect the dots. But so the problem is that Stephen Jennings guy over there, who he's the based CNN conservative or whatever, but it's all
that doesn't exist, by the way. There's no based CNN conservative, by the way, and there's few based conservatives whatsoever that get legacy media appearances, by the way, just to clear that up for people watching.
It's always like the same dynamic as Ben Shapiro debating a 19-year-old trans activist. Yeah, he looks all right on those panels, but who's he actually, Rob? He's a George W. Bush Republican, okay? And who's she actually? She's Stephen Miller's wife. So she's totally married to this administration. He's totally married to the regime in general. And so none of them can just make the obvious point, which is that, yes, you're worse than Nick Fuentes. This is the thing that all of them, because again, look, this is like the Noam Chomsky shit, right? Anyone who would be that honest won't be there to begin with. Think about this, right? I worked for this company, right? I was I guess not an employee, but I was a contractor of Turner. I was at this building, right? I was a contributor on SE Cup show. And now I've gotten bigger than anybody on CNN at this point. And yet I'm not in that building anymore, right? Because they just don't keep people like me around. And so there's a reason why it's not just me. There's probably 200 different political commentators who have big podcasts who would make this same point, who would just devastate them.
Absolutely, and you see the same reason for why Tucker was fired from Fox News. It wasn't because of his ratings, which were completely dominating everyone else on legacy media news, completely dominating them. It was because of the things he said. So even if his performance was superior, and if you're going to say that the media exists to make money, I'm sorry, no. The whole Tucker system and Tucker example, I think, breaks that completely, that conception, that notion. It is to push an agenda. It is to push the regime's talking points on what we should focus on. Not the wars, not the debt, not the giant welfare state and the unsustainable unaffordability crisis in the country. We're supposed to pay attention to and care most about having a no-no person on an independent podcast that the legacy media fired. Just think about that. That's what they're going with.
What do you mean? Oh, Nick Fuentes. Oh, who is CNN head on? Let's go through the list. Rob. Okay, you give me the problematic people that Tucker Carlson has had on. You could give me Nick Fuentes 5 times. All your Daryl Coopers and me and whoever else the people are. Now, who has CNN had on? Oh, yes, everyone who sold the lockdowns, everyone who sold the terror wars, everyone who sold the financial crash of 2008. You guys, like, Rob, it's just the arguments just make themselves. You guys are so much worse than him. And yet the only thing they can hold on to is like, but he's a Nazi and we're not Nazis. Therefore, he's bad.
Yeah, and they do support Ukraine, of which the Azov Regiment is a part. That's an actual neo-Nazi group. You actually want U.S. taxpayer money to fund that, and then we're supposed to believe your concern is over Nazism. Well, I'm sorry, no. We'll have nothing of it, because you want American taxpayer money to go to Nazis. You know, that seems a little bit more important to me than actually trying to, dissuade someone from having a conversation with someone else with impure thought. It just does. And Dave's exactly right about this. CNN has James Clapper on the show, the guy that lied under oath about the NSA surveillance program, exposed for that. He was hired by CNN as an analyst, and then he became the national intelligence director, played a role in Russiagate, and guess who we're going to have all the time? James Clapper. John Bolton on CNN all the time. His decisions led to the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people in Syria and elsewhere, but we're supposed to just be totally fine with that. He's not a monster. He's not Nick Fuentes. No more. CNN, this is why you're being rejected wholesale by people that actually care about death machines and absurd expenditures and corruption in Washington, D.C.
How pathetic. The role of like modern journalism couldn't be summed up better than this woman. This woman who has never had an interesting thing to say ever once. There has never been a time where anyone on that panel, but this woman who hosts the show, there's never been a time where she said something, Rob, and you went, shit, you could tell she's really read deeply on this subject and thought a lot about it. That was a compelling point. She's never once done that, ever. Was a big story that she's broke? No. But what does she do? She sits there to race to let you know that anyone who had those views would never have been invited on this show. And if they were on this show, they wouldn't be invited back.
But you can be a mass murderer like John Bolton and an arch villain of the swamp, James Clapper. You can be anyone related to the military-industrial complex, anyone doubling down on Israel's genocide in Gaza. You can be invited on CNN, but not if you have impure thoughts about Jews or Hitler and didn't kill anyone. That's literally what they're saying. You have to read between the lines, or I should say read between the lies in how they're trying to propagandize it, but that's what it actually means.
What's the point of that? What's the point of giving you that information, Rob? What are you to deduce from that? Well, it's very simple. She's a good person. That's what it is unbelievable how many journalists are just in the business of telling you that they're a good person. Like that is something that should, if you are trying to be a journalist and be good at your job, that should be like the rule number 1 is you never make the story that. And these other people, because like, what is that? And then again, also, by the way, it isn't what's so laughable about all of this is like, imagine what are you saying? You wouldn't have Nick Fuentes on your show? Who cares?
Exactly. You wouldn't get any criticism, not because people wouldn't care about that, because people have no idea who you are. That's the only reason they're complaining about Tucker, because he is the biggest draw in terms of influencers on the right. And you see this conversation happening that people don't want to see. They don't want to see there's actually overlap in attacking the Israel First mentality and the robbery of American sovereignty over the banner of the Star of David, in the halls of Congress, in our bureaucracy, in our executive branch, guiding our foreign policy. You're afraid of that. You're not afraid of his views on Hitler. Hitler died 80 years ago. You do not care. It's about the Israel First mentality. That's what this is all about. It's all it's ever been about. And they won't say it, because they have to gaslight you. They have to gaslight you into supporting censorship programs, a ministry of truth that they pushed, policing disinformation on the internet. That's what they want to push. And this is just part of that scheme. And Americans, again, they've rejected it wholesale, and we're not going back. We're going to the independent media, not to the legacy media that sold us down a river with lies and lies and lies for my entire lifetime.
I'm sure he wouldn't do your show at this point because it's just like a waste of his time. So anyway, I don't know. I just thought this was an interesting moment. It's like you do see like the same way through all of wokeism, through the rise of Donald Trump. January 6th was a great example of this. But it's like time and time and time again, they can't adjust to the fact that like your sensitive liberal values are just not important to people. The fact that you found this thing to be like, it's always what animates the people in the corporate media the most is when there was something that we found undignified that really hurts my sensibilities about who we are as a people. And like, but it's always just symbolic nonsense. Tucker had a conversation with Nick Fuentes, or someone, Donald Trump said, "Grab him by the pussy" once in a private recording. No, it's just like they're animated by a story that gets their panties in a bunch and allows them to tell you, "I'm a good person," and that person is not. That's really what they're in the business of.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's what this is all about. It really is. And if they demonstrated like half of the indignation or half of the anger toward actual mass murder campaigns that our tax money is supporting, instead of this guy's impure thoughts, and again, I think they are, but that's not the lead. The lead is the pernicious corruption in Washington, in the surveillance apparatus, in the welfare state that's running us dry, that's forcing the Fed to print more bills to impose inflation on all of us. We all see it in grocery stores and gas stations. They say that CPI shows that inflation is down. Well, what they really mean by inflation being down is they mean that the dollar's value is depreciating slightly slower than the quickest rate in history. That's what they mean. And the CPI doesn't even take into account all the inflationary industries that we see around us when we do go out and have to buy products and services. We do see healthcare costs and housing costs spiraling out of control to the point that people won't even buy a house. The average age of people that do buy a house is 40 at this point. And it's telling. It's telling about where we are. And instead, we have to focus all of our ire, all of our indignation as part of their propaganda scheme on this guy for having wrongthink. That's what they want our attention focused on, to cover up the sins of the regime that we're languishing under because of the decisions of Washington, because of the president. And by the way, it's a uniparty, it's bipartisan. The left said, we need more spending and more wealth redistribution to fix this crisis. And the right said, we need more taxation. We don't like the fact that Americans aren't paying high enough taxes on foreign goods. They don't sell it that way. Of course, they say, we need to tax China, which that's not what tariffs are. But only the right and only the left in Washington could have gotten together on those two things and said, you can have both. You can have a trade war and you can have more spending. We're going to spend you into the drain, put your posterity in shackles, make them indebted to the state the moment of their birth for no fault of their own. And on the right, we're going to make it harder for Americans to acquire goods and services they want, that they would choose outside of the coercive taxation power of government. And we're going to do this in the middle of an inflation crisis. That's what you get from Washington, D.C. And still, they say, oh, the issue is Fuentes. The issue is Tucker. No, I'm sorry. It's the sins of the regime in which we struggle to live under. That's the truth. But what do you guys think? Do you think Dave Smith is right about this? Do you think this is just absurd? How long are they going to talk about Nick Fuentes? Is this going to go on 6 more months? Is this going to be the lead story when the United States is trying to overthrow the regime in Venezuela, which it is trying? They haven't dropped the bombs yet as the time of this recording, but maybe they will soon. Will this still be the lead when there's a regime change in Venezuela? I guess we'll have to see. But I think their priorities are just a little bit warped, and Americans are taking notice. And that's why Americans have rejected CNN. They've rejected MSNBC. Progressively, they're rejecting Fox News and other cable news outlets as well for the very same reasons. And I think it's a good thing. In fact, I think it's the biggest source of hope that we can have as distance, that people are just rejecting them for all their history of lies. So what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to Dave Smith. Awesome segment. Really appreciate him covering it. Also, if you like this video or my response to it, please consider joining the channel as a YouTube member. You can do that by clicking the join button below. And if you do that, you'll get immediate access to all of my videos before they go live to the general public on YouTube. So you'll be able to view my members only videos immediately if you do that, and I really appreciate it if you do. And also, if you want a free copy of my first book, Compact of the Republic, click the link in the description below. It'll shoot you off to a website. You just plug in your email. I'll send that to you in PDF form, free of charge, no obligation, just because I appreciate you. And until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out, guys. Catch you in the next one.